Coming up on Outside the Lines, first report. Jordan Burnham was living the sort of life that any parent dreams about.
My son's high school experience had to be utopia. He had girlfriends, he was playing sports, he was doing well with it, getting Most Valuable Player awards.
But what no one knew was the pressure he felt.
I put these unattainable goals up so high, and when I didn't reach them, I would just beat myself up.
In his senior year of high school, Jordan barricaded himself in his room and jumped from a 9th floor window.
I don't remember falling. I don't remember the way that I hit the ground, but I can just remember my body just stopping.
Somehow, he survived.
When I was laying in the hospital bed, what I was hoping is that it would make it okay and even cool for young adults to talk about whatever they're going through and feel confident in doing so.
Today on Outside the Lines, the story of Jordan Burnham and the message he carries with him.
And now, sitting in for Bob Lee, TJ Quinn.
He doesn't remember the moments before, and he can't remember what happened when he jumped. But 4 years ago, Jordan Burnham, a popular high school athlete in suburban Philadelphia, tried to kill himself by leaping from the 9th floor of a building 90 feet to what seemed like a certain death. But he lived. Since that time, during the long process of healing his body and his psyche, Jordan has dedicated his second chance to sharing his story, hoping to reach other young people who may suffer from the depression he once did, a depression they might not understand or feel they can share with the people they love. Outside the Lines brings you the E60 story, Unbreakable, the story of Jordan Burnham.
Basically to make sure that you know where we are, what we do, who we are, and how we can help you.
I've been told that to get to heaven, you have to go through hell. Some of the worst moments in your life will, in turn, make some of the best moments in your life.
Please welcome Jordan Burnham.
I am 21 years old. All right, University of Miami. Hello. Guys, I can't tell you, I'm so excited to be here. I also tried to take my own life. So it's my job to go around the country to speak to kids in middle schools, high schools, colleges on my story. So growing up, I had my mom and dad who both worked in school districts, and my sister who's 5 years older than me. Now going through elementary school and into middle school, I actually was able to gain friends that I could trust, and I felt comfortable in the environment that I was now in. I fit in, and it felt like I was in one big family. I went to high school at Upper Merion High School in King of Prussia, and I started my high school career in 2004. My dad being an athletic director, I got exposed to so many sports, and baseball was just something that struck me.
Go JB, go JB. My son's high school experience had to be utopia. He had girlfriends, he was playing sports, he was doing well with it, getting Most Valuable Player awards.
He was really good actually at a lot of sports, so not just one. I mean, he was great with basketball, with baseball, golf. He's really good at golf.
The pressures on high school athletes is enormous in a lot of ways. I didn't want him to feel that play sports because I'm in sports.
I felt as though when it came to playing past high school, I put a lot of pressure on myself to try and make it out of high school. Especially being an African American, and a lot of times the only African American either on the baseball team or on the golf team, I felt like I always had to be the best at my sport. Because I put these unattainable goals up so high, and when I didn't reach them, I would just beat myself up over and over again. Going into 9th grade, I was voted class president, which is something I should have been proud of, should have been happy about, but at the same time, I was going to that school with fake smiles, with fake laughs, with a mask on my face. 9th grade was also the first time I started to see my grades slip, and I couldn't figure out why.
It's really hard at that point in high school to try to work, you know, with your son or daughter at that age. He was more irritable. The driving test, of course, that situation really brought it out fully.
10th grade comes around and I was going to take my driver's test. I get there, do the blinkers, get to the stop sign, stop, go to parallel park, hit the curb 5 times and fail. I snapped. I bottled up all of these emotions that I had before this, and I snapped at the driver instructor and at my dad.
Screams, yells, curses at me. I'm like, excuse me? Never had that kind of confrontational situation with him, or even seen him that angry.
I had thoughts of, yes, maybe I should just take my car over a cliff, or maybe I should just try and take my own life because there's no point in being here anymore. I was diagnosed with depression when I was in 10th grade.
1 out of 5 kids before they turn 18 will experience an episode of depression. And one thing that we have seen pretty consistently is that there's a decreased serotonin levels within the brains of people who are depressed. And that basically impairs their ability to function.
It was like all of a sudden, you know, you had the answer to why he was sleeping so much and, you know, why he was having trouble focusing.
I thought it was like a cold. The more you take the medicine, the more you rest and get something to drink, some orange juice, you're going to get better.
One of the biggest symptoms that I know personally I saw in myself was the loss of interest in things that usually make yourself really happy. When I would go golfing and I wasn't happy about it, that's when I knew there was something really wrong. But you just don't want to talk about it. In the beginning of my senior year, I was nominated to play for the individual playoffs in golf, which should have been exciting to me, but it's still just numb to me.
It seemed like he was going to be our star player that year as a senior year, and expected him to be the person that would probably be making it to our suburban tournament.
So I remember my dad picking me up after I play this great round, after I'm so excited, and he looks tired. And I asked him what was wrong, and he says nothing. I'm just tired. And I just remember my mom sitting on the couch looking like she's about to cry. That's when my dad walked in with a duffel bag full of alcohol. When he dropped that bag, my heart dropped with it. Because here I am, their son, the person that should be making them the happiest, the proudest, and all I do is disappoint them.
Jordan, is this yours?
It's mine.
And he's just very upset and going, I'm just no good. I'm just no good, you know, I'm not a good son.
After that, I walked into my bedroom. I locked the door like I usually did when I was upset or mad at myself or my parents and didn't want to talk to anyone. But this time, I barricaded my door with my chair.
And I started banging on his door, calling him and saying, Jordan, come on, you know, I'm depressed about this too. And I was trying to talk to him, and he just said, I know he said no, Mom.
And that's the last memory I have. I don't remember falling. I don't remember the way that I hit the ground, but I can just remember my body just stopping.
What I saw was indescribable. To see him laying there, half unconscious, he's not gonna make it.
When I hit the ground, I was going approximately 50 miles per hour. It's just over 90 feet. Broke my fibula, my tibia. I shattered my femur, broke my pelvis. I broke my left wrist. I broke my jaw in 4 different places. I was in a coma for 5 days.
I just knew he was still breathing with the machine, so that's what you held on to every day, that we still had him.
I'm laying in this hospital, I have a trach in my throat. I'm down to 90 pounds. No one wants to tell me what happened. About 2 weeks go by and my sister's visiting. To this day, my sister and I remain best friends, so I knew if there was one person that was going to tell me what happened, it would be my sister.
Saw each other and said hi and whatnot. He said, he mouthed to me because he couldn't speak. He mouthed, what happened?
And she said, you went out your window.
And then he looked at me and asked, did someone push me?
Who pushed me?
I looked at him and said, you know, you were by yourself.
Suicide attempt. How did I survive a 9-story fall?
All I could think to say was God.
There were so many things with his body that needed to heal, and little by little, he just kept setting goals for himself.
I was in a hospital for 5 months and they were there every single day.
I remember the first time he had a walker and they said, just go 10 feet. And the next thing I know, he's going out the door. And I'm like, Jordan, how'd you do that? And he would just look at me and smile.
But at the same time, I'm missing my entire senior year of high school. I was able to do some things like go to my senior prom, but I was in a wheelchair. I was able to graduate on time, but I went to that graduation in a wheelchair. Now, leading up to graduation, my dad and I discussed what my goal was. That was to be able to walk at graduation. I'll never forget wheeling up, and I put the brakes on the wheelchair. I get up, and my dad left the walker right there that I was gonna walk with. The only thing I see is my dad. I know in his heart that this is the proudest moment he's ever had of his son. He should be dead. And I go back down the stairs, and almost metaphorically, I can't even get to the last step without my dad being there.
He's coming down the steps, he looks at me. There's a great look. He says, Dad, thanks for being here for me, and Dad, I love you.
And he hugged me back and he said, you know, I love you too. And I think in a lot of ways that was almost him saying, I'll never let you fall again.
Depression shows no bias. It can affect absolutely anyone. They can be the star athlete, they can be popular, they can appear to have it all, but it's more about what's going on the inside. And Jordan wore that mask.
When I was laying in the hospital bed, what I was hoping is that it would make it okay and even cool for young adults to talk about whatever they're going through and feel confident in doing so. Thank you, University of Miami. You guys have been so great. I really appreciate it. When I got home out of the hospital, the mantle that you see behind me, that's what I saw. I saw my accomplishments that my dad put there to remind me, we're proud of you no matter what. Look at what you have done with your life before this and what you're going to do after this.
Well, the numbers on suicide and depression for young people are staggering. According to the Centers for Disease Control, almost 150,000 young people are treated every year for self-inflicted injuries. Overwhelmingly male, 84% of reported suicides. And you see that young people ages 18 to 29 are far more likely than adults 30 and older. Let's bring in Jordan Burnham himself, who you first saw here about a year ago when E60 and then Outside the Lines first brought you his story. Jordan, welcome. We also bring in Grace Carricarte, whom you also saw in the story. She's a licensed therapist, and she's the executive director of the Ganley Foundation. Jordan, first catch us up in the past year. How are you doing right now?
TJ, first off, thank you so much for having me on yet again this year to be able to share my story, to share my message. I feel great today, being able to physically walk independently now. It's great to get to that place. Also emotionally and mentally, I'm doing great because of a healthy emotional balance, finding the right things for me to make myself happy, to keep myself healthy, as well as having a strong support system. And that led me to be able to tell my story to people, students all over the country, which I'm very fortunate to be able to do.
Grace, when you hear a story about a young person going through what Jordan did or with any kind of severe depression, one of the first things you hear people ask is about the circumstances of their life, as though it's, the fact that Jordan was an athlete, that he was popular, that those should have been determining factors. What are the questions we should be asking?
Well, it's important to know certain things, such as those who might be more at risk, whether it's a family history. But it's really so important that we look at the warning signs and symptoms that can be present. And in the year prior to Jordan's suicide attempt, all of those were present in his case. And it's important that we start to be educated about what to look for, because unfortunately we don't like to get to funerals and hear after the fact that they were present and that nobody know what to look for or how to step in and get that individual help.
Jordan, you speak to young people, as we saw in that story. When they talk to you on the side or one-on-one, what kind of questions do they ask you?
A lot of times people, especially young adults, have the question of how can I help someone who has depression, but oftentimes they're speaking of someone that usually is themselves actually struggling through a difficult time or whatever it may be. But I tell everyone that everyone has a rainy day. It's just whether they can find the right umbrella for themselves, and it's all about accepting you for who you are. And that's the message I really try and help young adults to understand, is that everyone has to find that healthy emotional balance. And when I hear kids ask me, what can I do to help someone who has depression? I tell them that it's okay to talk about these issues. It's okay to talk about this topic, even suicide as well. Feeling more comfortable in doing that, I think, is the main message that I try and get across.
The pressure that you talked about in the story, Jordan, where did that come from?
I think that a lot of pressure comes from just being a young adult trying to live up to certain standards that you might set for yourself, that peers might set on you, that parents might set on you. Whether it's achieving the grades that you want to, whether it's making the sports teams and doing well on the field, being able to become successful. And a lot of times, whenever I didn't reach that first goal, I didn't have a backup plan, so I would get down on myself, tell myself I won't be successful like anyone else in my family. And putting that unfair pressure on myself was something that I wasn't able to cope and handle with in the appropriate way.
Grace, over the last 40 years, the number of suicides has tripled. Do we know why the numbers have increased like that?
I wish I had the answer to that. Some people look at an increase of reporting. Some people look at other pressures that our youth are faced, or things like the internet. Somebody can Google a means to hurt themselves. But what we do know is that what we really have to start doing is shifting in our society the way we look at mental illnesses, to remember not to differentiate it from any other biological illness, where we want to focus on prevention when possible, early detection and intervention. We don't like to wait till something's more terminal state before seeking that medical help.
Grace, what are the biggest misconceptions you still hear from people about suicide and depression?
I continue to hear, and part of this is wonderful that media is focusing on some of the cases of suicide, but we look at these extreme cases where the individual was gay or bullied, and yes, those populations are at a much higher risk for suicide, but we also know that those who are depressed are at a 20 times higher likelihood for suicide than the general population. So we want to make sure that we look at this and we say it's not, we don't want to box in what type of a child or individual could be affected by depression or by suicide, because it really shows no bias and can affect everyone.
Jordan, one of the things I think a lot of people found striking in your story is the part where you're hearing from your sister what happened, and that you didn't know if you'd been pushed out of the window, that you weren't aware you had tried to commit suicide. What was that like for you to hear her tell you that that's what happened, as you tried to piece together what led to that moment?
Honestly, it was very shocking to hear what happened, something that, I knew I had these thoughts and emotions of what would life be like for other people if I wasn't here. I'm going through like a checklist of, well, how would I do this? Would I actually go through with attempting suicide? But never thought I would go through with those actions and with those thoughts. 19% of young adults contemplate suicide in a given year, but the ones who have depression are 5 times more likely to go through with it. I never thought I'd be a part of that statistic. So I think that part of my recovery became, 1, accepting what happened, and then 2, finding a way to emotionally and physically get my life back, but then coping with the suicide attempt that honestly I thought would never happen.
Grace, from a scientific standpoint, what does it tell us about suicide that Jordan wasn't able to remember that moment, that it was an impulse, or just it was not clear in his mind after the fact that he had made that decision?
Well, part of that memory loss could have been due to the trauma of following 9 stories. But we also know that for many youth, suicidal acts are impulsive, which means he didn't put any thought to it. He hadn't planned it out the day before. Some youth do, though, however, and make a plan, and that's an important warning sign to look out for as well. We do know that with the youth brain, there's so many more vulnerabilities present, including hormones. Jordan was talking about those pressures he was internalizing, and also that the prefrontal cortex of the brain of an adolescent is completely reorganizing itself, and that's the area responsible for judgment and organization. So Jordan was having all these suicidal thoughts and not coping appropriately with them in unhealthy ways. And there was that trigger in his brain that went off with that argument with his parents about having the alcohol, and he enacted on those suicidal urges that he had already been experiencing.
Jordan, we have less than a minute left, but if you can, in that little bit of time, what's the most important thing that you think young people who are struggling with depression need to know about their situation?
I think I want young adults and anyone to understand that the brain is just like any other part of your body, and it should be treated as such. People oftentimes put stigma along with depression or sad thoughts. Going to see a therapist is just like a checkup of going to see a doctor. I want people to feel more comfortable in talking about these issues and feeling as though everyone goes through them. It's just a matter of speaking up on them, because silence is our biggest threat.
Jordan Burnham, Grace Carricarte, thanks so much, both of you, for being with us. If you want to share your thoughts on Jordan's story or any of our stories, go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/OTL. You can post a message on our wall, check out unique content, and feel free to like us. And if you missed any portion of today's show or any of our programs, you can download it on a podcast available on ESPN.com from either the OTL webpage or at the Pod Center or at iTunes. It's free. Stick around, more ahead. Great. Jordan, thank you so much. I know it went by fast, but it means a great deal, and it was great to see that story again.
Bye, Jordan.
Thank you so much, DJ. All right. God bless. Happy New Year's to you.
You too. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
And you I can thank in person, because we're not.
Yay.
The Detroit Lions are in the playoffs for the first time since 1999. And this weekend, the Lions are actually favored at Lambeau Field. Partially because some key players are out for the Packers. Just 3 years ago, the Lions were the lowest of the low, went 0-16. Now the team that had been the butt of NFL jokes is helping motivate the Motor City.
It was very tortuous because everywhere I'd go, everybody would call us the Pussycats.
How has this Lions team, since crawling from 0-16 rock bottom, lifted this city?
Back then we were at the bottom of the heap, right? Well, now, wherever the Lions are, that's where this city is. And that's where the city is in everybody's eyesight.
Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern, Outside the Lines. How the Lions are finally giving the city of Detroit something to cheer about. And join host Susie Colbert, senior insider Chris Mortensen, and a rotating cast of NFL analysts and guests in ESPN's latest unscripted show, NFL 32, as our experts discuss the biggest topics of the day from all 32 NFL teams. NFL 32 each weeknight, 6 Eastern on ESPN2. Stay with us.